A man once asked a Sufi, "How will I know if Allah is preparing me for something greater?" The Sufi placed a full cup in his hand and began pouring more water into it. The water spilled everywhere. The man said, "Stop. The cup is already full." The Sufi looked at him and replied, "Then how can Allah fill your heart while it is still full of people, fear, pride, and dependence?" My dear brother, my dear sister, perhaps this is why your life suddenly feels empty. People disappeared, doors closed. What once gave you comfort no longer reaches your heart. But before you call it rejection, answer one frightening question. What if Allah is not taking your life away from you, but removing everything that was keeping your heart away from Him? This is the strange test that separates the chosen from everyone else. The test begins when Allah removes what you thought you needed. There comes a moment in the spiritual journey when Allah begins to remove the very things you believed were holding your life together. A person leaves, a door closes, a plan collapses, a source of comfort suddenly disappears, and your heart asks, "Why would Allah take away something I prayed so deeply to keep?" But this is where the strange test begins. What you called a blessing may have slowly become a dependence. What you called love may have become attachment. What you called security may have quietly replaced your trust in Allah. You may have believed that without this person, this position, this opportunity, or this dream, you could not survive. So Allah allows it to leave, not always because it was evil, but because your heart had begun to treat it as necessary. The chosen are tested differently. They are not only tested through hardship, they are tested through removal. Allah empties their hands so they can discover what is still present when everything else is gone. At first, this feels like punishment. You feel abandoned. You question your prayers. You wonder whether Allah is displeased with you. But later, you may realize that the removal was not rejection. It was rescue. Allah was teaching you that your life was never being carried by the thing you lost. It was always being carried by Him. The person was only a means. The job was only a means. The opportunity was only a means. The real provider was always Allah. This test separates those who worship Allah only when life feels safe from those who continue turning toward Him when every visible support has disappeared. Anyone can speak about trust while everything is going well. True trust is revealed when the road becomes empty and the heart still says, "Allah is enough for me." Do not assume that every removal is the end of your story. Sometimes Allah removes what you thought you needed because He is about to show you what you truly need. He removes the temporary support so you can discover the eternal one. He closes the familiar door so you stop standing outside a place that was never meant to contain your future. And when you finally stop reaching backward for what Allah removed, you may discover that the loss was the first step toward freedom. The test was never simply about losing something. The test was whether your heart would collapse with the creation or rise toward the Creator. The chosen are broken away from the crowd. There is a strange stage in the spiritual journey when Allah begins to separate you from the people, habits, places, and patterns that once made you feel safe. At first, you may not understand what is happening. Conversations that once excited you begin to feel empty. Crowds that once made you feel accepted begin to make your heart feel tired. People you once believed would remain forever slowly become distant. You may even find yourself alone without knowing exactly what changed. This separation can feel painful because the human heart naturally wants belonging. You want to be understood. You want people beside you. You want familiar voices to reassure you that you are still walking in the right direction. But sometimes Allah removes the noise around you because your soul can no longer grow inside it. The crowd often teaches you to seek approval. It tells you to measure your worth through attention, praise, and acceptance. It pressures you to hide the parts of yourself that are changing because your growth makes others uncomfortable. So Allah breaks your attachment to the crowd, not because every person around you is bad, but because your heart must learn to stand before Allah without needing witnesses. The chosen are often separated before they are strengthened. Their loneliness becomes a hidden classroom. In that silence, they begin to hear what the noise of people had covered. They begin to recognize their own intentions. They begin to notice which desires were truly theirs and which were borrowed from the expectations of others. They begin to understand how much of their life was built around being seen, praised, or accepted. This stage can make you feel forgotten. But being separated does not mean you have been abandoned. Sometimes Allah takes you away from the crowd because the crowd knows only the old version of you. They remember your weakness. They expect your old behavior. They may keep calling you back toward the person Allah is helping you leave behind. Your distance may be necessary for your transformation. The seed must disappear beneath the earth before it becomes a tree. From the outside it looks buried, but beneath the surface, it is being prepared for a life it could never reach while remaining exposed. Your loneliness may be doing the same thing. Do not rush to fill every empty space. Do not return to harmful company simply because silence feels uncomfortable. This separation may be protecting your heart. Allah may be teaching you that your peace is more valuable than belonging to the wrong circle. The chosen are not always those surrounded by many people. Sometimes they are the ones who learned to walk alone until their hearts became strong enough to walk only for Allah. Every false support collapses before the real path opens. There are times when Allah allows every support you trusted to fail at once. The person you depended on becomes unavailable. The promise you believed in is broken. The plan you spent years building suddenly falls apart. The door you thought would save you closes without warning. It can feel as though life has turned against you. You may ask why Allah allowed so many things to collapse at the same time. You may wonder why the people who said they would remain were the first to leave when you needed them most. But this collapse may be revealing something your comfort had hidden. Not every support was truly supporting you. Some people were only present while you were useful to them. Some opportunities looked like blessings but were quietly pulling you away from your peace. Some relationships gave you temporary comfort while making your heart weaker, more dependent, and more afraid of loss. Allah sometimes allows these supports to collapse so you can see their true weight. Anything that falls the moment hardship arrives was never strong enough to carry your destiny. The strange part of this test is that the collapse often comes before the direction becomes clear. Allah does not always show you the new road immediately. First, He may remove the false road. First, He may close the wrong door. First, He may expose the weakness of what you trusted. This empty space between what ended and what has not yet begun is one of the hardest places for the heart. You have no old support to return to and no clear future to hold. This is where trust is born. Faith is not only believing when the answer is visible. Faith is continuing to walk when Allah has removed the map, but has not removed His presence. The real path often opens only after your heart stops begging the false supports to return. As long as you are still looking backward, you may not recognize the door opening in front of you. You may keep praying for Allah to rebuild what He is trying to release you from. You may keep asking for the same person, the same place, or the same opportunity, even though Allah knows it cannot carry the person you are becoming. The collapse is painful, but it can also be mercy. It destroys the illusion that creation has power by itself. It teaches you that people are limited, plans are fragile, and worldly security can disappear overnight. But Allah does not disappear. When every false support falls, the heart finally discovers the one who was carrying it all along. Then the real path begins to open, not always with noise, not always with a miracle everyone can see. Sometimes it opens as a quiet certainty inside you. You stop chasing what left. You stop forcing what keeps resisting. You begin to move with peace rather than fear. And only then do you understand that the collapse was not the destruction of your path. It was the clearing of it. Every false support collapses before the real path opens. There comes a stage in the spiritual journey when the things you trusted begin to fall one after another. A person you depended on becomes distant. A promise you believed suddenly breaks. A plan you thought was secure collapses. A door you were certain would open remains closed. And because these things happen close together, it may feel as though your entire life is being emptied at once. You may ask, why is Allah allowing everything to fail me? But perhaps the deeper question is this: why had your heart begun to believe that these things could never fail? People are limited. Their love may be sincere, but their strength has limits. Their loyalty may be real, but circumstances can change them. Money can disappear. Positions can be lost. Plans can collapse. Even the strongest worldly support remains temporary. The problem is not that you use these things. The problem begins when your heart starts believing that it cannot survive without them. So Allah allows the false supports to reveal their weakness. This does not always mean that those people were evil or that every opportunity was harmful. It means they were never meant to become the foundation of your heart. A bridge can help you cross, but you were never meant to build your home upon it. When the bridge collapses, you may think your journey has ended. But sometimes Allah removes the bridge because He is opening a road you would never have noticed while you remained attached to the old direction. The hardest part is the space between the collapse and the opening. You cannot return to what was. You cannot yet see what is coming. You stand in a silent place where nothing feels certain. This is where the chosen are separated from everyone else. Many people return to what harmed them because uncertainty feels more painful than familiarity. They run back to old relationships, old habits and old doors simply because they are afraid of the empty road. But the one being prepared by Allah learns to remain still. You stop forcing people to stay. You stop begging closed doors to reopen. You stop trying to rebuild what Allah has allowed to fall. Slowly, the heart understands that the collapse was not the end of the path. It was the removal of everything blocking the real path. What looked like abandonment was purification. What looked like failure was redirection. What looked like destruction was Allah clearing the ground beneath your feet. And when the real path finally opens, you may realize that it could not appear while your heart was still leaning on what was never strong enough to carry you. Allah hides you until your heart stops needing to be seen. There is a strange kind of test in which Allah does not take away your ability, your sincerity, or your potential. He simply hides it from people. You may work quietly while others are praised. You may carry wisdom that no one asks to hear. You may improve yourself, change your habits, and become stronger. Yet the world continues to treat you as though nothing has changed. You may wonder why Allah allows others to be noticed while you remain unseen. This hidden season can be painful because the human heart naturally wants recognition. You want someone to notice the effort. You want someone to understand the battles you fought in silence. You want proof that your patience, discipline, and sacrifices mattered. But Allah may keep you hidden because He is healing your need to be seen. There is a difference between doing something beautiful and needing people to confirm that it is beautiful. There is a difference between serving Allah and secretly waiting for creation to applaud you. The hidden season reveals that difference. When no one praises you, will you continue? When no one understands you, will you remain sincere? When your growth receives no attention, will you still protect it? These are difficult questions, but they purify the heart. Being hidden is not the same as being forgotten. A seed beneath the soil is hidden, but it is not abandoned. It is protected from the wind, the cold, and the feet of those who may crush it before it becomes strong. Allah may be hiding you for the same reason. If attention came too early, it might feed your pride before your character was ready. If praise came too quickly, it might make you addicted to approval. If everyone recognized your value before you learned humility, you might begin living for their eyes instead of living for Allah. So the hidden season becomes a form of mercy. In that silence, Allah teaches you to work without applause. He teaches you to pray when no one is watching. He teaches you to improve without announcing every change. He teaches you to become more concerned with being accepted by Him than being understood by people. The chosen are often hidden until their hearts stop demanding recognition. Then, if Allah later brings them forward, praise no longer controls them. And if Allah keeps them unknown, they remain peaceful because they have already found something greater than fame. They have found the quiet freedom of being known by Allah. That is the secret of this test. You are not being hidden because you have no value. You may be hidden until your value no longer depends on who sees it. Allah hides you until your heart stops needing to be seen. There is a test that almost no one speaks about because it does not look like hardship from the outside. You are not losing your health. You are not losing your faith. You are not facing a great public disaster. Instead, you are simply unnoticed. You work hard, yet no one seems to appreciate your efforts. You strive to become a better servant of Allah, Yet few people recognize the change within you. You remain sincere, but others receive the praise. You remain patient, but others receive the opportunities. You begin to wonder if Allah has forgotten you. But this hidden season is often one of the greatest tests given to those whom Allah intends to raise. The ego has a quiet hunger. It does not always seek wealth or power. Sometimes it only wants to be noticed. It wants someone to say you are important. It wants people to admire its sacrifices. It wants recognition for every act of goodness. Yet the path of the chosen is different. Allah may hide you until the desire for recognition slowly dies. Not because recognition itself is evil, but because a heart attached to people's praise cannot be completely attached to Allah. Imagine carrying a lamp through the night. If you constantly stop to ask others whether your light is bright enough, you will never reach your destination. But if your eyes remain fixed on the path ahead, the light will continue to guide you even if no one notices it. The same is true for your spiritual journey. The value of your worship is not measured by how many people see it. The value of your sincerity is not increased because others applaud it. Allah sees what people overlook. He knows every tear that never reached your face. He knows every temptation you resisted when no one was around. He knows every prayer whispered in the darkness when your heart felt broken. Nothing is hidden from Him. Some of the greatest friends of Allah lived unnoticed. History remembers only a few names, but Allah knows every sincere servant who ever walked upon this earth. The world often celebrates what is loud. Allah honors what is sincere. Do not believe that your hidden life is an empty life. Sometimes Allah keeps His most precious servants away from unnecessary attention, because fame can become a heavier test than hardship. Recognition can feed pride. Praise can weaken sincerity. Admiration can slowly replace humility. So Allah protects certain hearts by allowing them to bloom in secret. When your heart finally becomes content with being known only by Allah, something extraordinary begins to happen. You stop performing for people. You stop comparing your journey with others. You stop chasing applause. Instead, every act becomes an offering to your Lord alone. That is a freedom very few people ever experience. The chosen are hidden, not because they are forgotten, but because Allah is teaching them to seek His pleasure before the praise of the world. The loneliness is teaching you who your soul belongs to. Perhaps the hardest part of this strange test is not the loss of things, it is the silence that follows. There are seasons when Allah allows you to walk through life feeling completely alone. The phone becomes quiet. Old friends disappear. Even those who once promised they would never leave become occupied with their own lives. You may find yourself spending long nights with no one to speak to except Allah. At first, loneliness feels like a punishment. The heart naturally longs for companionship. Allah created us with the desire to love and to be loved. There is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes our hearts begin to depend on people for the comfort that only Allah can truly provide. When that happens, Allah gently removes the distractions, not to break you, but to bring you closer to the one who never leaves. Loneliness has a language. In the beginning, it speaks through sadness. It reminds you of everyone who walked away. It fills your mind with memories. It makes you question your worth. But if you remain patient, its voice begins to change. Slowly, the silence becomes peaceful. Your conversations with Allah become longer. Your prayers become more honest. You stop speaking beautiful words just because they sound good. Instead, your heart speaks exactly as it feels. That honesty is precious. Many people only remember Allah when they need something, but the chosen begin speaking to Allah because they have discovered that His companionship is greater than the company of the entire world. This is why many righteous people treasured moments of solitude, not because they hated people, but because they had tasted a closeness to Allah that could not be found in crowded gatherings. The world teaches you to fear being alone. The path to Allah teaches you to fear being distant from Him. These are two completely different things. You can sit in a room filled with people and still feel empty. You can also sit alone before dawn with your hands raised to Allah and feel richer than kings. That is the secret the world rarely understands. Loneliness is not always the absence of people. Sometimes it is Allah removing every competing voice until His voice becomes the one your heart follows most. Do not rush to escape every quiet season. Do not fill every empty moment with distractions. Some silences are invitations. Some empty spaces are sacred. Some lonely nights are preparing a heart that will one day carry a light too great to be sustained by the approval of people. The chosen are often introduced to solitude before they are introduced to their true purpose. Because before Allah entrusts you with greater responsibilities, He teaches your soul who it truly belongs to. And when you finally learn that your heart belongs first to Allah, the loneliness that once frightened you becomes one of the greatest gifts you have ever received. Your old self must die before the truth can enter. There is a version of you that cannot enter the next stage of your spiritual journey, not because Allah has rejected you, not because you are unworthy, but because the person you have been is carrying too many things that cannot pass through the narrow door ahead. Old pride, old fears, old attachments, old habits, old ways of seeing yourself. You may be asking Allah for a new life while still protecting the identity that belongs to your old one. This is why transformation can feel like death. The body remains alive, but something inside you begins to disappear. You no longer enjoy what once distracted you. You no longer feel comfortable in places that once felt familiar. Certain conversations become heavy. Certain desires lose their sweetness. Certain ambitions begin to look empty. You may feel confused because you are no longer the person you were, yet you have not fully become the person Allah is preparing you to be. This middle stage is painful. You feel suspended between two worlds. The old self is dying, but the new self has not yet found its voice. Do not panic when you stop recognizing yourself. Sometimes this is a sign that Allah is removing the false identity you built from wounds, approval, fear, and survival. Perhaps you became strong only because you were afraid to be vulnerable. Perhaps you became silent because you feared rejection. Perhaps you became pleasing to everyone because you believed love had to be earned. Perhaps you spent years protecting an image that was never your true nature. Then Allah begins to dismantle it. He shows you that not every thought in your mind is the truth. Not every desire in your heart deserves obedience. Not every label people gave you belongs to you. The ego resists this process because it survives through familiarity. Even pain can become familiar. Even a harmful identity can feel safe simply because you have carried it for years. But the truth cannot settle in a heart that is still crowded with false definitions. Before the light enters, the room must be emptied. Before the new name is written, the old inscription must be removed. This is why the path of inner purification often feels like loss. You lose the need to prove yourself. You lose the desire to win every argument. You lose the hunger to be admired. You lose your attachment to being understood by everyone. To the world, this may look like weakness, but in reality, your soul is becoming free. The chosen are not people who build a more impressive ego. They are people whose ego slowly stops sitting on the throne of the heart. They begin to understand that they are servants, not masters. They stop demanding that life obey their plans. They stop measuring their value through the eyes of others. They become quieter, but their silence carries weight. They become softer, but their softness is no longer weakness. They become humble, but their humility is not humiliation. This death of the old self does not happen in one day. It happens through repeated surrender. Every time you forgive when your pride wants revenge, something false dies. Every time you remain sincere without recognition, something false dies. Every time you choose Allah over your own desire, something false dies. And with every small death, a deeper life begins. Do not mourn every part of yourself that Allah is removing. Some parts of you were built only to survive a season that has now ended. You are not losing yourself. You may be meeting yourself for the first time. The final door opens only when you stop resisting. There is a door in the spiritual journey that cannot be forced open. You cannot reach it through impatience. You cannot unlock it through control. You cannot enter it while demanding that Allah explain every step before you obey. This door opens through surrender. For a long time, you may stand before it with clenched hands. You pray, but your prayer contains a hidden condition. You say, Allah, I trust you, but only if you give me the outcome I want. You say, I surrender, but please do not take this person. You say, guide me, but let the path look exactly as I imagined. This is not complete surrender, it is negotiation. And many hearts remain trapped in suffering because they are trying to negotiate with the one who already knows what will save them. Resistance is exhausting. It is the endless argument between your desire and Allah's decree. It is replaying the past and insisting that it should have happened differently. It is holding tightly to a closed door because you fear there is nothing beyond it. It is asking Allah for peace while refusing to release the thing that keeps disturbing your soul. The final door does not open when life becomes easy. It opens when the heart stops fighting reality. This does not mean you stop praying. It does not mean you stop making effort. It does not mean you become passive in the face of injustice or hardship. Surrender means you act with sincerity, but you release your demand to control the result. You plant, but you understand that Allah sends the rain. You walk, but you understand that Allah chooses where the road leads. You love, but you understand that every person belongs to Allah before they belong to you. You hope, but your hope is no longer tied to one specific form. At first, surrender feels frightening because the ego believes control is safety, but control was never real. You could not control who stayed. You could not control which door opened. You could not control how others understood you. You could not control every delay, loss, or change. Yet you exhausted yourself trying. The moment you release this burden, something inside you becomes quiet. You may still feel pain, but the pain is no longer fighting you from within. You may still face uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer feels like abandonment. You begin to say, Allah, I do not understand, but I know you are not careless with my life. That sentence changes everything. The chosen are not those who receive every answer. They are those who continue walking without needing every answer. They trust the wisdom behind the veil. They understand that surrender is not losing. It is placing the weight of your life back into the hands of the one who was carrying it all along. Then the final door begins to open, not always as a visible miracle. Sometimes it opens as acceptance. Sometimes it opens as peace after years of inner conflict. Sometimes it opens as the strength to leave what you once begged to keep. Sometimes it opens as a new path you could not see while you were still facing backward. And when you finally enter, you understand why force never worked. The door was not waiting for your strength. It was waiting for your surrender. The chosen are the ones who choose Allah when nothing else remains. There comes a final moment in this strange test when everything becomes clear, not because your problems disappear, not because every door suddenly opens, not because the people who left return and apologize. It becomes clear because your heart finally understands what the test was truly asking from you. The question was never only whether you could survive the loss. The deeper question was this: when everything you loved was removed, would you still choose Allah? When the prayer seemed unanswered, would you still bow? When the road became lonely, would you still walk with Him? When no one praised your patience, would you still remain sincere? When the future became uncertain, would you still trust the one who controls it? This is what separates the chosen from everyone else. Many people turn toward Allah while life is giving them what they want. Their hearts are peaceful because the relationship remains comfortable. Their prayers feel strong because the answers seem near. Their trust appears deep because nothing precious has yet been taken from them. But the hidden reality of the heart is revealed when nothing remains as expected. When comfort disappears, some people abandon the path. When delay becomes long, some people assume Allah has forgotten them. When loss touches the thing they loved most, some people begin to believe their worship was useless. But the chosen continue. They may cry, but they continue. They may feel weak, but they continue. They may not understand what Allah is doing, but they refuse to turn away from Him. Choosing Allah does not mean that pain no longer hurts. It does not mean you must pretend to be strong every moment. It does not mean you will never question, grieve, or become tired. Even a sincere heart can become exhausted. Even a trusting servant can weep. The difference is that the chosen bring their exhaustion back to Allah instead of using it as a reason to leave Him. They do not say, I feel no pain. They say, Allah, I feel pain, but I still belong to you. They do not say, I understand everything. They say, Allah, I understand very little, but I trust that you understand what I cannot see. They do not say, I need nothing. They say, I need many things, but I need you more than all of them. This is the secret. The chosen are not always the strongest people. They are the people who return to Allah every time their strength fails. They are not people who never fall. They are people who discover that even the ground beneath them belongs to Allah. So when they fall in His direction. The world teaches you to choose Allah as long as life remains comfortable. The path of the sincere teaches you to choose Allah even when obedience costs you what your ego wanted most. You may have to choose Allah over a relationship that is destroying your peace. You may have to choose Allah over an opportunity that feeds your pride but weakens your soul. You may have to choose Allah over the approval of people who only accept you when you disobey your conscience. You may have to choose Allah over your own plans, and this is where the test becomes strange. Sometimes choosing Allah does not immediately make life easier. Sometimes it makes the road lonelier. Sometimes it closes more doors. Sometimes it creates a silence around you that feels almost unbearable. But within that silence, something pure begins to grow. You stop worshipping outcomes. You stop measuring Allah's love by how easy your life feels. You stop believing that every hardship is a sign of rejection. Your relationship with Allah becomes deeper than what He gives and stronger than what He removes. You begin to love the giver more than the gift. This is spiritual freedom. As long as your peace depends on receiving one particular thing, that thing owns a part of your heart. As long as your faith depends on life following your plan has become a hidden master. But when you can say, Allah, I desire this, but I desire your closeness more, the chains begin to break. Then loss no longer has the same power over you. People can leave, but they cannot take Allah with them. Doors can close, but they cannot close the door of prayer. The future can remain unclear, but it cannot escape His knowledge. The world can misunderstand you, but you remain fully known by the one who created your heart. This is why the chosen often appear calm after passing through great storms. Their calm does not come from having an easy life. It comes from learning that nothing can remove the one who truly sustains them. They have lost enough to recognize what cannot be lost. They have been disappointed enough to recognize the one who never breaks His promise. They have walked alone long enough to recognize the companionship that never leaves. Perhaps this is what your test has been teaching you. Perhaps Allah allowed the supports to collapse so your heart could discover its real foundation. Perhaps He allowed the crowd to disappear so you could hear your soul calling Him. Perhaps He kept you hidden so you would stop living for the eyes of people. Perhaps He broke the old version of you because that version could not carry the truth He wanted to place inside you. And perhaps the final door remained closed until you were ready to choose Allah without demanding that He first give you everything you wanted. When nothing else remains, the heart becomes honest. There is no audience. There is no reward you can see. There is no worldly reason to continue. There is only you and Allah. And if, in that moment, your heart still turns toward Him, then the test has revealed something precious within you. You were not worshipping comfort. You were not worshipping recognition. You were not worshipping answered prayers. You were seeking Allah. This does not make you better than others. It makes you more responsible. A heart that has been brought near must become more humble, not more proud. The chosen do not walk around announcing that they are chosen. They fear their own ego too much for that. They do not look down upon those who are struggling. They remember how many times Allah carried them when they nearly gave up. Their trials make them gentler. Their loneliness makes them compassionate. Their losses teach them not to judge the hidden battles of others. Their closeness to Allah makes them quieter, because they understand that true rank is not a title claimed by the tongue. It is a secret known only to Allah. So do not ask whether you are among the chosen. Ask whether you continue choosing Allah. Choose Him when your prayer is answered. Choose Him when the answer is delayed. Choose Him when people love you. Choose Him when they misunderstand you. Choose Him when your heart feels full. Choose Him when your heart feels empty. Choose Him when you can see the wisdom. Choose Him when the wisdom remains hidden. This is the path, not a path of perfection, but a path of return. Again and again, you return. Again and again, you place your heart before Allah. Again and again, you release what was never yours to control. And one day you may look back and realize that the strange test did not come to destroy you. It came to separate your love for Allah from your attachment to everything else. It came to show you what remained when the world was removed. And what remained was the most precious truth of all. You still had Allah, and because you still had Allah, you had not truly lost everything.